Welcome to the debate. So at the modern World Cup, the stadiums are rigged with these incredibly sophisticated optical tracking systems. Every single second of a match, those cameras captured 25 frames of all 22 players, plus the ball.
Right, yeah.
And that yields millions of spatial coordinates in just a single game. I mean, the beautiful game is no longer just this canvas of human intuition. It is a giant churning math equation.
It really is a staggering amount of information. We're well beyond the days of managers just standing on the touchline, relying entirely on their subjective eye to figure out what's going wrong.
Mm-hmm.
The traditional, murky diagnostic waters of football have been replaced by something intensely clinical.
Exactly. And that is exactly the profound paradigm shift we are examining today. The sport is evolving rapidly into a predictive science driven by artificial intelligence and advanced biomechanics. So the central question we're exploring from our source material is this. In an era where deep neural networks process this absolute avalanche of movement data, how does human intuition actually survive?
Yeah, that's the big one.
Right? Like, are coaches fundamentally losing their tactical authority to predictive algorithms? I'll be taking the stance that AI acts as a rigorous scientific scaffolding that elevates human creativity, empowering coaches to make hyper-informed decisions.
And I'll be arguing that AI is systematically dismantling that subjective human intuition and effectively usurping the traditional tactical authority of the coaching staff.
Well, I see why you'd think that. Well, let me give you a different perspective. I really don't think AI usurps the coach at all. Instead, like I said, it's that scientific scaffolding. It empowers coaches to make decisions that honestly just weren't possible 20 years ago.
Look, I think we're going to find that the cost of that information is basically the soul of the manager's role.
Let's ground this in reality, though, by looking at the sheer scale of the data. Imagine standing at pitch level. You have 22 elite athletes moving at blistering speeds in multiple directions.
Right.
The human brain simply cannot decode that kinematic influx. I mean, the sheer volume of geometry, acceleration rates, relative distances, it's impossible to process in real time. It is literally impossible.
Well, obviously, human biology has its limits, right? No manager can see the exact distance in millimeters between their center backs on every single phase of play.
Exactly. So by outsourcing this incredibly heavy computational lifting to machine learning, coaches aren't losing their authority. The AI takes this massive noise and synthesizes it.
Synthesizes it, sure, but
It's an analytical empowerment. It allows teams to push the absolute boundaries of strategic complexity without stripping the romance or unpredictability out of the sport.
it gives the human mind the tools to be even more creative.
I hear your enthusiasm for the scale of the data, I really do. But we need to look at what that data is actively doing to the people actually running the team. The sport is being reduced to a quantifiable laboratory.
How so? Well, the subjective eye test, the very essence of how a visionary tactician builds a squad and reads the game, is being actively eliminated. Take scouting and squad building, for example.
Okay.
It used to be about feeling the rhythm of a player, watching their body language, seeing if they fit the unquantifiable ethos of a club. Now,
In the farthest reaches of space, one scientist refused to stop searching. Every discovery uncovers The Scientist Explorers. Available now, just $4.99 on Amazon Kindle Unlimited. Start the adventure today.
with a specific pass in a specific zone.
Which to me provides a much more objective baseline for evaluating talent. It removes the bias of a scout just, preferring a player because they look flashy on the ball.
But at what cost? When predictive analytics dictates which player mathematically fits the system, and algorithms dictate the ideal tactical setup, the touchline coach undergoes a fundamental demotion.
A demotion?
Yes. They transition from being a visionary tactician to a mere middleman. Their primary job just becomes executing the script that an algorithm has written, based on statistical similarity and predictive modeling.
That's an interesting point, though. I would frame it differently. Let's look at how this data actually maps out on the pitch, specifically regarding spatial dominance. AI is utilizing deep neural networks to construct dynamic Voronoi diagrams and pitch control models in real time.
Let's pause there and make sure we're clear on Voronoi diagrams for a second. We're talking about algorithms that mathematically divide the pitch into specific zones based on who can get to a loose ball first, right?
Correct. Yeah, it looks at every player's current speed, trajectory, and location, and instantly calculates the probability of a team controlling any given patch of grass at any millisecond.
It quantifies the space.
Yes, perfectly said. Now, this doesn't replace the coach's tactical blueprint. It illuminates it. It allows a coach to visualize microscopic spatial fractures in the opponent's defensive line before they are fully exploited.
Right.
It is akin to a chess grandmaster using a supercomputer to study openings. The machine maps the massive complexity of the board, but the human master still orchestrates the overarching philosophy. The coach decides they want to exploit the half spaces, and the Voronoi diagram just helps them see if they are actually doing it.
See, I come at it from a different way. That chess analogy implies the coach is still the one making the creative leap, but the academic papers on sports analytics reveals something far more prescriptive. Let's look at ghosting algorithms.
The simulation models used in training and post-match analysis.
Exactly. Deep neural networks process those millions of coordinates you mentioned earlier, but they don't just show the coach what is happening. They simulate the absolute optimal positioning for every single player at any given second, based on historical defensive perfection. The AI creates a ghost, basically a transparent overlay on the tablet of where the player mathematically should be standing. It then compares the actual defensive shape to this mathematically ideal structure.
Right, identifying structural weaknesses and tracking errors. It's brilliant for feedback.
But look at the dynamic that creates on the training ground. If an algorithm is defining the singular, objective, ideal defensive shape, the coach is no longer inventing tactics. They are enforcing mathematical compliance.
Oh, I wouldn't call it compliance.
They look at the screen, see the ghost is 5 yards to the left of the actual fullback, and they yell at the fullback to shift 5 yards. That isn't tactical authority. That is compliance monitoring. You're just following a machine script blindly.
Well, I'm not convinced by that line of reasoning because you're assuming this mathematical ideal exists in a vacuum, right? Completely separate from human intent.
Doesn't it?
No! The ghosting algorithm isn't a god. It has to be tuned to a specific manager's philosophy. If a manager wants a high pressing system, the ghost is programmed to simulate the ideal high press. If they want a low defensive block, the ghost reflects that. Sure, but the coach is still the architect. The AI is just the plumb line, making sure the walls are built straight.
Okay, but even if we can see that the coach sets the macro-level architecture, the broad defensive shape, the AI is still relentlessly encroaching on the micro level. Because once the ball is won, we have to talk about what happens to individual player creativity.
You mean the in-game decision-making?
Yes, setting up a defense is one thing, but what a player does with the ball at their feet is entirely different. Because this is where the survival of human intuition is most hotly debated. Space dictates where players go, but what happens when they actually have the ball?
Well, modern AI models of football matches a dynamic, directed graph. Imagine the players acting as nodes, and every pass functioning as the connecting edge. To optimize this network, teams use expected possession value, or EPV.
Right.
A player can take with the ball. A pass backward might decrease your chance of scoring by 2%, while a through ball might increase it by 15%.
And the argument is always that this suppresses creativity.
Exactly. But I argue that using EPV to strip away inefficient passing actually clears the mental clutter for the players.
Clears the mental clutter? How does evaluating percentages clear a player's mind?
Because if a defensive midfielder knows that certain movements and passing lanes in their own half are mathematically proven to yield a higher probability of advancing the ball without a dangerous turnover, they don't have to hesitate. They execute.
They become robots.
No, they become efficient. By proving scientifically which baseline movements work best, the AI handles the routine efficiency. And that means true flashes of individual human genius. The intuitive creativity that breaks a game wide open can occur in the final third, closer to the opponent's goal where it actually matters.
I'm sorry, but I just don't buy that. Let me tell you why. You are glossing over the actual mechanism of how EPV evaluates these microscopic decisions. We are talking about a player deciding in a fraction of a second between passing down the wing or attempting a dribble through the center.
Right.
EPV models are built on historical data sets using Markov decision processes.
Let's clarify that for the audience real quick. A Markov decision process is basically a mathematical framework for mapping out the probability of transitioning from one state, say, holding the ball near the sideline, to a better state, like having the ball in the penalty box.
Exactly. It looks at thousands of past games to say, in this exact scenario, action A leads to a goal 4% of the time, and action B leads to a goal 1% of the time. And reinforcement learning algorithms calculate the exact probabilistic value of every single action.
Yeah, it's fascinating.
It is, but when a coaching staff drills this into a team, they are essentially programming players to choose the highest probability path at every single node of that graph. You're fundamentally replacing in-the-moment human creativity with a rigid statistical playbook.
But is it a rigid playbook or just a smarter one?
It's a deterministic one. A midfielder isn't feeling the flow of the game anymore. They aren't trying an audacious, intuitive pass because their instinct, their gut, tells them the defender is leaning the wrong way.
Right, but
They are drilled to recognize a specific spatial trigger and execute the action with the highest goal yield. You aren't clearing mental clutter, you are replacing the human mind's creative intuition with an internalized calculator.
well, give me an example of what we're losing then.
Okay, let's use a real example. Think about Diego Maradona's goal of the century in the 1986 World Cup against England. He picked up the ball in his own half, spun around, and dribbled past half the opposing team.
One of the most iconic moments in sports history.
Exactly. But under an EPZ model, that decision is objectively terrible.
Taking on 5 players single-handedly from your own half is a massive, low probability, inefficient action. An algorithm would have graded that as a colossal mistake.
That's true, yeah.
If Maradona was raised in a modern academy strictly trained by expected possession value, that intuition to just run with it would have been coached out of him entirely. We lose the very essence of unpredictability.
That's a fair distinction regarding the nature of unpredictability, but I would argue that if an internalized calculator results in the team consistently breaking defensive lines more effectively, the intuition hasn't been destroyed, it has just evolved.
Evolved into math.
The player's intuition is now aligned with statistical reality rather than human cognitive bias. Sometimes our gut tells us to do something that is actually just a bad idea disguised as heroism. Not everyone is Maradona.
But football is built on those heroic, illogical moments. They succeed precisely because they are illogical and therefore totally unreadable by the opponent. If everyone plays the perfectly optimal mathematical pass, the game becomes a solved equation.
Well, let's pivot slightly, because all of this tactical positioning and passing efficiency falls apart completely if the human bodies executing the plays break down. Let's look at the physiological optimization of the players. Managing a World Cup squad through a grueling tournament is as much about physical survival as it is about tactics.
Which brings us to the death of the gut feeling in player management.
See, I wouldn't call it a death, I'd call it an evolution of care. Let's look at the mechanisms here. We have computer vision algorithms tracking players' skeletal structures from the cameras. We have wearable GPS trackers harvesting time series data on micro changes in stride length.
Right?
They monitor asymmetric movement patterns, like if a player starts favoring their right leg by just 2% without even realizing it.
And the acute to chronic workload ratios, basically checking if a player's physical exertion this week has spiked dangerously compared to their historical average.
Exactly. The medical departments feed all this biometric data into AI models, specifically utilizing things like support vector machines.
Let's break that down for the listeners.
Sure, yeah. A support vector machine is essentially an algorithm that draws incredibly complex mathematical boundaries between different categories of data. In this case, it separates the data of a healthy player from the data of an imminently injured player by looking at hundreds of tiny variables simultaneously. It predicts soft tissue injuries like hamstring tears with remarkable accuracy before they even happen. I see why you think relying on a dashboard restricts a coach, but let me give you a different perspective. Predicting soft tissue injuries doesn't undermine a coach's authority. It guarantees their best players are actually available for the knockout stages.
That's a compelling argument, but have you considered what actually happens on the touchline during the 75th minute of a grueling World Cup quarterfinal?
Well, you have to make a change.
Right. But historically, Navigating that intense physical demand required a manager's deep, empathetic intuition. A great manager could look at a player's posture, read the emotional rhythm of the game, and know intuitively when that player was running empty. It was a deeply human connection between the coach and the athlete.
And do you believe that connection is being severed by the data?
I believe it is being completely outsourced to silicon. Substitutions used to be a tactical and emotional art form. Now, they are increasingly driven by algorithms analyzing anomalous decelerations. The iPad buzzes with an alert that a midfielder's deceleration symmetry has dropped by 4%, crossing the predictive threshold for muscular fatigue.
Which is incredibly useful.
But when physical loads and in-game tactical shifts are mandated by real-time physiological algorithms rather than a manager reading the human reality of the match, the traditional tactical authority of the coach is effectively dead. They are just deferring to the dashboard.
But relying on empathetic intuition alone is incredibly risky. Empathy cannot detect a microscopic 4% change in a player's biomechanical gait.
Maybe not, but
The human eye just isn't built for that level of precision. An algorithm is. If a manager relies purely on their gut feeling and leaves a fatigued player on the pitch because they look fine, and that player tears a hamstring 5 minutes later, that human intuition has actively failed the team.
but it was still a human decision. It was part of the risk of the sport.
An uninformed risk, AI shifts the medical and coaching departments from a reactive, guessing stance to a proactive, objective intervention. It perfectly tapers a player's physical load so they peak precisely for match day, and ultimately, the authority still belongs to the coach to make the final call. The computer doesn't submit the substitution card to the referee, the coach does.
I would argue that the immense pressure of this data makes the final call an absolute illusion. If the support vector machine tells a manager that their star striker has an 82% probability of a soft tissue injury, if they play another 10 minutes, the manager has no real choice.
They have the choice to take the risk if they are chasing a goal.
Do they? To ignore the algorithm and have the player actually get hurt is to risk professional negligence. The media, the fans, and the board would crucify them. The headline writes itself. Why did you ignore the data?
Well, the machine is making the decision, the manager is just the one holding up the substitution board. And this extends beyond physiology right back to the tactics we discussed earlier. If the pitch control model says the formation is structurally failing and the EPV model says the passing network is inefficient, the coach is cornered by the mathematics. They lose their tactical authority because arguing with the algorithm becomes a fireable offense.
You use the word cornered, but I see it as being liberated from guesswork. You no longer have to hope your defensive line is spaced correctly. You know.
So, to summarize my position in light of our discussion, the integration of artificial intelligence and complex network analysis serves as the ultimate optimization engine for elite football.
Right.
From the dynamic Voronoi diagrams that perfectly map spatial dominance, to the expected possession value models that refine decision-making, down to the biomechanical tracking that preserves player health, this technology provides a rigorous, scientific scaffolding. It doesn't sterilize the sport or rob the coach of authority. It perfects human performance. It allows the coaching staff to operate their squad as a seamlessly calibrated machine, without losing the intrinsic, unpredictable brilliance that makes it the beautiful game.
And to summarize my stance, while the game undoubtedly becomes faster, smarter, and more mathematically optimized, we must acknowledge the profound loss occurring on the touchline and on the pitch. Outsourcing tactical setups to ghosting algorithms, reducing spontaneous creativity to Markov decision processes, and yielding physiological interventions to biometric dashboards fundamentally shifts the authority from the human mind to the machine. We are permanently altering the intuitive, beautifully flawed nature of the sport. We are replacing the visionary authority of the coach with a deterministic compliance to the numbers.
Well, as machine learning continues to evolve, the intersection of these predictive algorithms and human intuition will only grow more intricate. The technology certainly isn't going backward.
No, it isn't. The game is fundamentally changing, and the tactical chessboard is more mathematically complex than ever before.
Indeed. The diagnostic muddy waters of football's past are clearing up. The imaging is getting sharper, and the data is becoming undeniable. But whether that perfect mathematical clarity reveals the true soul of the game or simply replaces it with a calculator is something you will have to evaluate for yourself as you watch the next generation of football.